So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into this live stream webinar. I'm Kathleen Taylor with the Nevada Women's Business Center, and today we're going to talk about leadership development for entrepreneurs. And I am so excited and so pleased to have Ms. Veleta Keller here with us today, and she has a plethora of experience in this particular sector based upon her own experience. So thank you so
You're
much
so welcome.
for being here. I really appreciate it. And, oh, pardon me. Uh, that's the interesting part about having live streams. You hear everything. You can't go back and edit it, so pardon me. I would like to share with our audience, and thank you so much for tuning in, some background about you and your experience. So, Veleta Keller is on a mission to develop leaders marked for greatness in their personal and professional life. Veleta created the Marked Leader. The Marked Leader promotes life-changing workshops that not only evolve personal and professional life skills, but also prepare entrepreneurs to perfectly handpick their talent, train, and develop their teams. The main emphasis of the Marked Leader is to design leaders that inspire and elevate. Also, Veleta is changing how you show up in the world and to each other by understanding that your presence is the most powerful thing you own. So I think that is just so powerful.
I love that.
Me too. Thank you for sharing that with us within your background. So, into this, would you share with the audience what set you on this path, this journey of leadership development?
Wow. So it's interesting. When I moved to Vegas about 12 years ago, I decided to go into management, entry level. I wanted to learn, and they liked me. I liked them, my team that hired me, but they wanted to develop me. And they wanted to, mold me for greater things, and I love that. But almost everything that I did, they tried to correct.
Okay.
And I had a southern drawl. I had a lot of pet names for everyone.
Sure.
And I was just being myself. And I remember saying to myself, they wanted to change and evolve me so much into this different person. I remember saying, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it my way.
Sure.
Because my paycheck did not reflect what they
Your worth.
asked of me.
Sure.
And so I did. I did it my way. I connected with people on a different level. I was excited when I saw my team walk through the door. I had a vested interest in their lives, their personal lives. Even if I didn't see them for months at a time, I still asked them, how did that birthday party go? Or just certain things or certain ideas that I related to how I wanted to be treated. We're together for 8 to 10 hours.
Yes.
So why not make someone feel valued? Why not make someone feel missed? Why not make someone feel encouraged?
Sure.
We were asking them to do a lot of things for us and for our property. And I don't think it's fair that you don't invest and redeposit into the people that you're asking to give to the guests and the clientele that walk through the door.
Sure.
And so that started my journey, just seeing a different way to coach, develop, lead, and support people. I just didn't see it that much around me. I saw a lot of transition. People would come and go. People were just concerned with getting promoted.
Sure.
The city, Las Vegas, has this thing where certain people tend to feel like, okay, I got it. Now I should be promoted. I should be the leader. And I noticed that a lot of people didn't want to develop their own skills. They didn't want to crawl before they walk. They didn't want to just observe, like close their mouth and open their ears. They didn't want to know who their people were. Get to know everyone's last names. Get to know who everyone's children were. Know who's working for you.
Sure.
And so I just decided to take that route. And it made me stand out. And it made me realize I had something. And I wanted to teach other people how to slow down and pay attention to those things that really mattered.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that really matter, from an entrepreneur perspective, It sounds to me that it takes a lot to motivate yourself as a leader and as an entrepreneur, and also motivate your team. So what are some things from a training perspective that can be integrated into the culture of training your personnel in order to motivate them and to then lead them to be their best self?
Okay. So there's so many things that you could do. Everybody's business needs something different, but I can promise you the one core thing that everyone can benefit from is investing in your people personally. Connecting with them on a level where you don't do all the talking all the time. You ask them what they think. You create a space for them to develop their ideas and how understand how their ideas correlate to the business and how they can make things more productive. They're the ones in the field. They're the one who see everything.
Right.
On a training aspect, it's interesting how most entrepreneurs and businesses, they understand training is very important, but when we begin to cut costs and when we begin to cut back, that's the first thing that goes.
Right.
So we are left to pamphlets, acknowledgments off of policy and procedures read,
Right.
and videos.
Exactly.
And that's not enough.
Right.
Because if you don't value training, they won't value training.
I agree.
So I offer these key tools. Be consistent. Always state your non-negotiables and have it begin with training. Your non-negotiables, whether it be how you treat your employees, what your expectations are, but you have to be consistent with that because those people will train other people. And when new people come on board, they will watch your current employees.
Right.
So be consistent. Always state your non-negotiables from the beginning. If it's promptness, if it's not being tardy, if it's productivity, if it's sales, always be clear.
Yes.
You cannot, once you're clear with it all the time, they understand where you come from. Another thing that I think is very important is you have to know who's working for you.
Right.
So you have to learn what motivates your people. And when you don't know, you keep trying different things until you see that excitement, you see that energy just vibrate off of everyone. For example, I used to use a lot of TED Talks. Things that I found interesting that pertained to business, and they were short. They were 10 to 20 minutes. I would share it with them, build team building exercises that weren't so boring or that you just hurry up and threw together because you said you did something. Design and wine, or anything that had to do with something outside of what they do daily. Create workshops where they can learn. Always express the opportunity for growth and movement.
Absolutely.
I think that's so important. And another thing with training is always communicate with your team where the business stands. So always a good idea, quarterly meetings with your team where you're letting them know where you exceeded expectations or where you could do better.
Right.
Where the business is going, what the bottom line looks like, what your goal is. Have quarterly management meetings so they know and they can feel a part of this growth. They can feel like they can contribute to it. And things don't feel like it's so, how do you say it?
Non-transparent?
Yes, non-transparent. I think it's important to be very transparent and let them know who they're working for, what your goals are and your intentions, and that you maybe didn't reach your mark that quarter.
Right.
But
Right.
they know that you can't do it without them.
Exactly.
So I think those are really, really important key points that could really help any business.
I think that's really key. And in addition to that, looking at it from a self-development perspective, I, being a former entrepreneur myself, I did leadership development and team building and professional development as well. And looking at it from an emotional intelligence perspective, I used to provide emotional intelligence training too. And I'm so glad that you're doing this, integrating that into your marked leader curriculum. So with, and from an emotional intelligence perspective, it it really does promote a sense of self-awareness about a person, not just within yourself, but also others as well. And it also enhances the culture of an organization.
It does.
So could you speak to that point in reference to what is emotional intelligence and how it's such an effective tool in staff and culture and organizational development?
Okay, so emotional intelligence is so interesting to me. It really is a new modern concept that wasn't fully developed until the 1990s by a gentleman named Daniel Coleman, amongst others. Others contributed to his studies. But before, the way of thinking of the world was your IQ, so your intelligence score, a level, or whatever you tested for, considered you to be a person that could easily maneuver life and work. Usually got paid higher, you usually receive the higher salary, and of course, we know that you probably don't have to put forth as much effort, as someone else to cognitively come up with an answer or to think of things, but more studies started to come about where that wasn't the case, where those people had the easier time at life and work. So that led on a bigger journey and search for more people. So what is it? What is that key something? What is that something I can't put my finger on that has this person succeed and this one not succeed? And this person's so smart and they've had this education. And as I started to learn more about it, I understood that it's just basically managing your emotions and managing the emotions of others, whether it's individually or whether it's a group. So those people have such great interpersonal skills that is what really transcends them above everyone else.
Right.
It also, those are the people that are less likely to suffer from depression, and they understand more their psychological standpoint, where they are. They know how to pull themselves back. They know how to go and apologize because they know they might have said something the wrong way, or they might have pushed, or they had the wrong moment. They know how to deal with the moment and move forward, which means they're ready for that next experience.
Right.
They're growing.
Yes.
They are growing. They are moving. And those people tend to have they tend to be better in social settings.
Yes.
Like I said, with interpersonal skills, and to be great leaders. Those people are really great leaders. And so I highly, highly suggest anyone that isn't aware of what emotional intelligence is to incorporate small testings into your company and your business. It was done to me. I didn't know that's what it was. I've learned some things about myself, and I did not believe it. I did not believe it, but I received it because I wanted to be well-rounded. I wanted to be a leader that someone looked at where they were like, I want to be like her. I'm going to ask her. I respect her opinion. She leads by example. But it's a balance.
It is.
It's a balance. So there's a lot of small, short, free testing sites that you can take and that you can bring your team on a journey of. It teaches them so much about themselves. And you will know what kind of leader or what kind of potential leader you have that you want to develop or you want to grow within your company. Because those are the people you want watching out for your people.
Yes.
Those are the people you want watching out for your guests.
I agree.
Those are the people. So.
And in addition to that, what about the importance of an entrepreneur or a business owner bringing in a team of consultants that can enhance what they're trying to establish within the culture of their organization? Because even though you're a business owner, you are focused on working on the business and working in the business on a day-to-day operational perspective.
Right.
And you may know some things, but you don't know everything. So how important it is to have, those consultants or those resource partners to come in and fill in the gaps for you.
Goodness. Let me tell you, Kathleen, that's probably one of the best investments you can make. If you can afford to make that investment within yourself and your business, but it also is a true benefit to your team. So to fill in those gaps, number one, you need to search for the right business coach, I would say.
Right.
You need to search for the right one. Get a referral. really do some research on them. See where their heart is.
Yes, I agree.
See where their heart is.
I agree.
Make sure, if it's on the money, then it's on the money. If it's on the bottom line, if all they can see is numbers and dollars, then that's what you're going to get from them. But you need someone that is going to observe. Allow someone to come in and observe, not just you, but allow them to observe your team. And this is the funny thing. Some business owners and entrepreneurs won't let certain business coaches speak to their team because they're not sure what they're gonna say. So to me, that's just staged. If you're gonna dictate how that experience is gonna go, then you're never gonna reap the benefits of what could really happen.
I agree.
So I think it's the biggest investment that you can make. Allow someone to come in once you've selected, because you're hiring them to make you and your team better. Once you've selected them, allow them to really, really do their job. Allow them to be open and honest with you.
Yes.
Allow them to fill in the gaps and allow them to speak to your team.
I agree.
Allow them to speak to your team
Yes.
and make your team comfortable and make them comfortable to allow your team to say whatever and not reprimand them for it, not come down on them for it, but to take all of that was said and that was given to these coaches and let them really develop your business. Let them really show you what you can do if you make some minor or major adjustments.
Right.
So I do think that's the best investment you can make. If you think of life coaching, it's basically the same thing, but it happens in a business setting.
Right.
So everything is all business minded. So that's their focus. If it's if you give them certain things that you want to work on or you need to grow within your business, and yes, they're going to focus on that. But allow them to come in and observe. Allow them to tell you what they see before you dictate what you think needs to be worked on.
And speaking of what you think needs to be worked on, what advice would you give to the business owner who's not exactly comfortable in being a leader? I mean, like, for example, you have a gourmet chef.
Okay.
And this person is absolutely phenomenal, in creating these magnificent culinary creations. But when it comes to managing staff, leading a company, leading a business, they're comfortable in the kitchen. Everything else is like either they fall short, they don't quite know what to do or how to do it, and it starts to impact business.
Yes.
What advice would you give to that type of leader in the making?
Okay. I truly think that's the person you should spend the most of your time with. I truly do. I think that's the person that needs the guidance and they have something inside of them. They just don't know how to express it. They're timid. They're afraid. They probably haven't had good leadership themselves, but their heart is in the right place.
I agree.
Their heart is in the right place and they know their stuff. Okay, so that's the person that you need to meet with. You need to really invest your time in that person. I think that's the person you need to meet with, if not weekly, bi-weekly. I don't even think it should be monthly. Too much happens within a month.
I agree.
I think that's the person that if you're working on a business coach yourself, or if the business coach is looking at your team and helping you develop your team, that's when you say, I have a key member of this team that we really need to develop.
Sure.
And I want to bring them in on these coachings. And then you should have those individual coachings. You should always make that time for that person. Have a reoccurring meeting with that person. And you have to coach them to success. You have to coach them. When you start to invest that kind of time in someone, man, the confidence.
Oh, yeah, it goes off the charts.
And allow them to be privy to some intimate leadership moments you have. Allow them to pull them into certain really hard coaching conversations you have to have with certain people.
I agree.
Allow them to be privy to certain meetings where you probably get a little bad news.
Right.
Allow them to be privy to that so they can see how you react. Because when we're in leadership mode, we know that our presence is being watched by everyone. There's certain things that we do and don't allow our teams to see, our employees to see. So allow that person that needs that growth to see that there are many imperfections, that there are things you're figuring out on the spot, and that you will make bad decisions sometimes. And allow them to really see what the ups and the downs, the good and the bad, and let them know that you're here to support them. But there's some things you got to do, and there's some things that person has to contribute so you can get them there.
I agree.
Yeah.
And looking at on the other side of the spectrum, so to speak, where you have someone that that clearly has the gift of leadership within them. However, they tend to step out of their lane, so to speak, or take on someone else's role when clearly that person's role is defined, not in a complimentary way, but in a more like aggressive way. So how do you kind of like reel that person in that has the motivation, that has, the factor going on, but it may be a little too much?
So that's interesting. So that person you have to spend a lot of time with too. You
Yes.
do, because they can get so far off path and they can affect the rest of your team. So that's the person you have to reel in. And that's why I say, and I may not have mentioned it earlier, but how coaching is so important.
I agree.
It is so important. The easiest employees, okay, they're easy to coach. You give them a pat on the back, you let them know to continue doing what they're doing.
Sure.
But the hardest employees will challenge you as a leader.
Absolutely.
Let me tell you something.
Absolutely.
They will challenge you. They will go against everything you say. They will bring up something you said a long time ago and tell you were wrong. They won't let things go. But constant, continual coaching and calling them out in moments that you need to, but in a way that you allow them to express why,
Right.
is something that is very necessary for that employee and that person. They just need a little more guidance. They need much more coaching, and they kind of need their hand held through a lot of their own process. And so it's interesting because as a leader, you gotta stay to the pulse of things. You gotta keep with the pulse of
Yes,
things.
you do.
And so that's why I say it's so important to understand who and know who works for you, and know what motivates them. You can't all of a sudden come in and try to coach and try to train someone that you haven't had that much contact with.
Right.
So you have to have consistent, continuous presence with them, coaching with them, and be honest with them.
And in addition to that, you mentioned a couple times of know the people that you work with. How do you identify talent? You have a large pool, of qualified applicants. How do you identify the talent that will fit into the culture of the organization that you're trying to create?
Wow, I'm glad you said that. I think it's important to have a little bit of a loose structure to your interview. Understand that looking for talent and recruiting, it's also a marketing opportunity for you and your business. It really is.
Interesting.
It really is. You have the opportunity to tell people who you are and what you're about, and you have the opportunity to listen to someone and see who they are and what they're about.
I agree.
You see what I'm saying?
Exchange.
So you can't have too many questions for this person. You have to let them speak freely. But to get the truth out of people and to allow them to speak freely, you got to make them comfortable. You
Absolutely.
do. You have to make them comfortable.
That's essential.
So it's based, and I've been on many interviews, and I think that's where my success came in, and the respect levels that my peers and people had for me is everyone said I made them feel like they had the job. Everyone said I made them feel beyond welcome, but that's my job. I want you're interviewing me just like I'm interviewing you.
I agree.
So I want you to work for me. But my key is I let that person talk. I let them tell me as much about themselves. Before you know it, they're either speaking good or bad about their ex-employee, employer, or boss.
Yeah.
I let them open up to where I can see where their heart's coming from,
Yes.
genuinely.
Yes.
And that's just the key. It's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just letting someone have the platform instead of you dictating the questions, barely making eye contact, going through a line of questions that you're asking everyone else, and shaking their hand and saying you'll be in touch.
Right.
It's more than that.
Absolutely.
It's more than that. With what I did, although I was looking for key members for my area, the area that I worked in, but I had this thing. If I saw something great in someone and they were like, I'm studying business management and I'm doing this, or in my spare time I like to bake pies and I always make everyone's birthday cakes, I would be recruiting for different departments, and I'll say, you know what, you may not be the fit for us, but I want to get you in touch with someone that I think could really use what you've got. And so I just started, I created more work for myself, but I started putting people in touch with different people, and I just started seeing really what their love and their passion was, and I started to cross recruit basically.
Excellent.
And so then that's when the light bulb really goes off, and people are like, for real? They don't think it's possible, but you lay your heart out there, you be your best self, you show up, with every intention and the best energy you can.
Yes.
We're all responsible for the energy we bring to people.
I agree.
We're all responsible.
Absolutely.
No matter what your day is like.
Yes.
What you bring to that person, that employer, that interviewer, you're responsible for it.
Yes.
And it can either make or break you.
I agree.
So that's the only key, is I think that employers need to consider a different structure. Allow the people they're interviewing to speak. You'll get way more from them, and ask open-ended questions where they can expand a little more on things.
It sounds like that you have maybe intentionally or unintentionally integrated emotional intelligence methodology into the interview process.
Oh my goodness, I have. Yeah.
So, just could you share just a couple tidbits on how a person can do that?
Okay. So I think what I've heard lately, a lot of the interviewers will ask the same question. So tell me how you handled a difficult employee, or tell me how you handled a difficult boss. And so they hear that all the time. So I'll ask them questions like, tell me, how do you keep yourself motivated when everyone around you is just having a bad day? Or tell me how you inspire yourselves in moments when you don't feel like being at work. You've had a problem at home. Your day started off crazy. Your car wasn't working, got a flat tire. Tell me how you reset yourself and get yourself prepared to show up for your employer and your job. And so I touch on those things, how people self-motivate themselves, if they can or can't do it, if they really have to think about that question, then it's something that isn't natural for them. And I always like to ask them, where do they see themselves in the next 5 years? I don't care if it's a cashier job they're interviewing for. I want to know where you see tell me where you see yourself.
Sure.
Tell me your hopes for yourself. Tell me if you come on board with us or if you don't. I still want to know where you see yourself in 5 years. Not in a way like, are you coming for my job or do you? But in a way that I want to know more about you.
Sure.
And there may be a better and bigger opportunity for you, whether it's in this company or I can put you in a different direction. So I usually like to ask questions on how people kind of motivate themselves, manage themselves, how they deal with coworkers and employees, but in ways that aren't typical.
I agree.
So, yeah.
And speaking of typical, and this is just from my own point of reference, it sounds like if a person concentrates on the what and the why, for example, in a job interview or interacting with someone or team building or leadership development classes or something or training, they concentrate on, okay, this is what the situation is, okay, why this is what this is, and why would you take this direction to do A, B, and C? So the focus is on the what and the why. However, during this conversation with you, I noticed that you've always integrated the how. And the how, in my opinion, is what really separates the traditional aspect of leadership development and saying, this is what I have to do and this is why I have to do it, versus this is what I have to do and this is how I'm going to do it. And the how encompasses not only strategy, but also people and the pieces that you have to pull together to collectively do something as a team. And the how also integrates the emotional awareness and where people are at certain stages. So what are your thoughts about that in the context of the what of leadership and the why of leadership has its space.
Yes.
But the how of leadership has its own space as well.
It does. It does. It's interesting because if you think about a product or a business, if they tell you why they do what they do, instead of what they create or what their product is what they develop. We build computers, for instance, and then and I'm just using Simon Sinek from one of the talks I saw. Instead of saying, what we do is make your life easier. What we do is make sure you can connect quicker. What we do is give you exactly what you need to make your day flow. If you tell them why you do what you do instead of what you do, then we can figure out the what. Like you said, it's two different spaces. My goal is to always have people around me or that work for me that want to work for me because they believe in the same vision.
Right.
We can get the job done.
Yes.
And when I hire people, and this is why the space, like you said, the space are two different entities. When I hire people, I can have two people sitting in front of me. This one can have 80% skill and 20% of the personality I want to deal with.
Sure.
And this other person can have 20%, 30% skill, but they have that personality where I want to talk to them more. I want to be around them more. I'm going to hire this person.
Sure.
Because I believe in myself and I know I invest in my people enough that I can train her.
I agree.
I can teach her. I can train her.
For the what?
Exactly. I can train her for the what. I can show her. But the why, she's already got it.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
This person, I'm going to have a harder time training because they believe they've already got it. The what or the why we do it isn't as important to, well, I can do this, I can do that, I've done this, I've done that. I'm really overqualified for this job, but I need a job. That's not the person.
Right, exactly.
That's not the person. But you have to make up the difference. We have
Absolutely.
to, that's our job.
Yes.
My job is to make up the difference, to see the deficiencies,
right,
and to make up the difference.
Yeah.
Am I going to invest in her? Or am I going to invest in him?
Right. Fill in the gap.
And
that's where the leadership comes into play.
Exactly.
And recognizing where that gap is and where you stand in that gap.
Exactly. So
where do you, what advice do you give when you're dealing with a leader that is more passive? They don't want to stand in the gap.
Okay. So that was me. I was that leader. I was that leader. My upline, she was very firm. She was very sure. Her personality was really opposite of mine.
Okay.
And I stayed passive for a while because they just let me go.
Okay.
So one day she pulled me in the office and she said, look, we see great things for you, but we need to develop this, this, and that.
Okay.
I'm going to stand with you on these things. I'm going to stand with you on these hard conversations. And you have to be ready when I need you to step in. So the fact that she stood in with me and she saw my weakness, you think people don't see it, but they see it.
They do.
But understanding that passive leader or being that passive person, you're just hurting yourself. It's almost like a buildup of, you're building something on a shaky foundation.
I agree.
Okay, so as hard as it is to have the hard conversations, to call people out when you saw something, or to bring them in, and even if they skip one little step of a process, it's so important to call them out, but to give it to them in a loving space.
Sure.
And
Absolutely.
just say, I know, I'm aware that you skipped this step. I'm aware that you did or didn't do this. And I really need you to understand how important that we integrate this. It's key to our success, and you're key to our success. So it's important. And if I can help you in a way to understand why we can't get it done, if we don't have enough manpower, if you are just rushing through, I just want you to know this is a key component. And it's so important that I'm here with you so we can make sure we get it next time.
Right.
So most managers or leaders might just let something as simple go. The job was done. They did it. Okay, they were just a few minutes late, but they're here and they work hard when they're here. But you'll be more respected.
I agree.
You'll be respected more by your team, and it builds a muscle in you as a leader. So those uncomfortable feelings where you really don't want to say something to someone and you're just like, I'm gonna let them go, and this is the person that brings you snacks and candy bars every day, and you need to have a conversation with them, they will respect you more. Because when you're not present, they talk about the passive manager.
They do.
They talk about the passive manager, and they talk about what they can get over on the passive manager, and they ask you different questions than they ask the stronger leader.
Yes.
And so you want to be that leader that they go to for everything. You don't want people to see you deficient in some ways, broken in some ways, scared to say something in some ways. Even if you are, fight through it.
Right.
Push through it.
Yes.
Fight through it. And if you can't have that conversation with someone one-on-one, bring someone in. Bring someone in that'll allow you to speak, but they know your weakness, that they'll pick up where you fall off.
Right.
Bring someone in. Man, when an employee is going up against two leaders, they're not going to be as aggressive as they should. I'm telling you, because they have someone that is in agreement with them.
Yes.
So bring someone in until you build that muscle. Just find a solution, find a way to build that muscle. And the only way that I think you can do it is you just got to fight through those uncomfortable moments.
Now,
Yeah.
Speaking of leadership muscle development and fighting through those uncomfortable moments, what is your advice for the business owner or entrepreneur that has a situation where they are a leader amongst family? So they have the family dynamic going on in the business.
Yeah. That's tough. That's a tough one. I would suggest that not happen in your business, but I know that when starting a business and developing a business, I know sometimes that's the positions where we need to be put in. I say the same thing to the family member as I do a new employee. I'm clear on my non-negotiables.
Sure.
I am clear from day one. This is what I need from you, but this I won't accept. I can't bend on this, and this. If we can do everything else, and if you understand my position on these things, then I think we can really do this together.
Right.
So it's stating, I think you have to be very clear, and you have to be willing to go there even with family members.
Yes.
And you have to be able to have a different conversation with them, with employees, not at work, not flex that muscle, but you have to have that conversation, and you have to give care to that conversation, and you have to let them know, is there a space that we're in that you're not comfortable with? Is there something I can help develop you? I want us both to be great. I want us both to do great, but we can't do this and that anymore. And my team is looking at you. Like, I need you to step in for me when I'm not there.
Right.
I need you to represent my brand and my company.
Right.
So I think when you give someone that responsibility of your heart, your purpose, and your cause, and you let them know that you've entrusted that with them, I would hope that they would look at your business enough and value it enough to react differently, even if it was a little bumpy in the beginning. And I think that if their response to what you share to them has not improved their behavior or their productivity, then I think you have to do what you need to do for your business.
I understand.
I think you have to do what you need to do for your business, and I think you need to keep them separate and cultivate that business relationship, and still, of course, develop your family relationships and your personal relationships. And so I think it's a very hard space to be in.
That is.
Very hard space, and I understand why people embark on that, but you have to be as honest as possible. When you state your non-negotiables, then when things do tend to break down, and if you do have to separate, they're clear. They understand why.
And would you suggest in those moments that maybe someone with an objective perspective, like a resource partner or a consultant, can then come in, or even a business coach can then come in and kind of like mediate the situation, so to speak, between you and that family member? Do you think, that additional, filling in the gap with someone coming in, would that, kind of like balance things, so to speak? Because I just find that, I just find that when you, it's kind of like a parent and a child. You can tell your child, give them advice about A, B, and C continuously. It's the same message. Nothing has changed. And they're like, okay, yeah, whatever, but kind of blow it off. And this same child hears the same message from someone else that's outside of the whole family dynamic, and it's like, okay, yeah, I got it. So, but you're saying the same thing, but
Yes.
maybe you're a little too close to it.
I think so.
So what do you think about that? Would that kind of like facilitate the conversation?
I think so too. And I think that if you're a business that can't afford a business coach, then I think that you pull from your resources. You pull from,
How about a mentor?
yes, you pull from, that's what I was going to say. Pull from a mentor, pull from someone in leadership and business experience that have gone through the same thing. Ask them to come in. Your family member always, they need to be reminded more than anyone the business perspective.
I agree.
They need to be reminded more than anyone that the things that they do can hurt your business.
Yes.
And so I do think a third person, a third party to step in. I do think it has to be someone that you respect and value, and that your family members need to understand why you respect and value this person.
I agree.
And you have to kind of sit back and put yourself in almost like a learning position where you're both listening to this person. And it's interesting because I think people feel like they don't have the resources to pull in a business coach or someone that can help, and then things get a little too strategic, and you're writing down, you're giving homework, and you're try this and do that. But I think it's very important to really think about it and think outside of the box and draw from your resources, draw from your friends and your friends or your mentors or people that have seen you develop in business. So same people you call for business advice when you needed to get things done or create something are the same people you need to call on when relationships start to break down.
I agree.
So I absolutely agree with that. I think that's a great point that you made.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, you've been making fantastic points throughout the whole course of the conversation, and to kind of like wrap things up, what are some like pearls of wisdom that you'd like to share in closing with our audience in reference to leadership development for entrepreneurs?
I think that as you grow your business or as you start your business, just be in alignment with who you select to represent your business.
Right.
I think that's such a great starting point. And never underestimate the investment that you put into people. Because into people.
Yes.
Because when you are not present, you want your business to run a certain way.
Right.
If you invest in people and you state your non-negotiables and you're very strategic with who you put in place, you will be able to do more things because you can stay away from that business. You can refocus and trust that the managers that you put there and the employees that you put there will figure out things when problems arise. They will be good to each other. They can work stuff out. They will be there to pick up the phone on the first and second ring. They'll be excited to get new business instead of when you're away, everyone's sleeping.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I think that the key thing, and I really don't want people to remember anything else, I really want people to understand the value of investing in each other and their employees and the people that they bring on. I think that it doesn't stop once you get them hired. I think you always have to check in. I
agree.
I think you always have to check in, even if it's something that doesn't pertain to the business or to the work duties. I think it's just checking in. If you notice they just walked in and they just had a bad day, if you notice that they're always running late, and my director had to tell me this. There was a young lady that was always late, and I just kept coming for her, because I'm like, well, we can all be on time. Why can't she be on time? And my boss was pretty tough, and she pulled me aside and she said, have you ever once asked her why is she late every single day? She's like, have you ever once, instead of what you think she could do or should do, have you ever once just said, look, I noticed in 2 weeks you've only been on time 2 times? And I said, no, I never once. And she said, but you're quick to write her up, and you're quick to not have any conversation for her when she clocks in. So you add to her anxiety and her energy. You didn't give her a nice greeting because you felt like she did something wrong to you by being late. I later found out that young lady had not worked in 15 years. Her husband had passed, and he left her with 4 kids. So she was doing the best that she could.
Yes. Wow.
Just to get there.
Wow.
And cope.
Yes.
And how embarrassed and ashamed was I?
Wow.
It only took a second for me to pull her aside and offer, what can I do? How can we do this? Do we need to adjust your shift? What do you need from me? Because we value you and we want you here, but we got to hold you to the same standards as everyone else. So I'm here for you. What can I do?
That's humbling.
It was very humbling for me because I thought I was a good person. I thought I was an empathetic person. And what taught me that I really wasn't was my emotional intelligence test. It told me that I wasn't super empathetic. I was a person that thought that if I could do it, then why can't you do it?
Oh, I understand.
If I can show up on time, why can't you show up on time? I got my project done. Why couldn't you get your project done? We had the same timelines. And I realized I had to really step back and I had to take a different look at it. And so I ask you to invest in the people that work for you. They will work hard for you.
Absolutely.
They will be loyal to you.
I agree.
And when you're not around, they will handle business just as if you were there.
Exactly.
And that's key.
That is.
Yes.
Because then it's like your physical presence is still there even though you're not there. And they have a stake in the company because you cultivated that type of culture where they matter. Yes. When you invest in your people, your company will grow. When you invest in the money that your company can generate, somewhere along the line, you're not investing in the human capital of the equation, so to speak. And that's where, personnel and leadership comes into play, where you fill in the gap and step in that gap.
Yes.
So this has been such a delightful conversation. I'm so glad that you took the time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you for tuning in to our live stream webinar on leadership development for entrepreneurs. I'm Kathleen Taylor. And Veleta, if you would like for the audience to contact you, would you like to share your contact information?
Yes. I can be reached. You can find me at, if you can email me at veleta@themarkedleader.com. I have the Mark on my Facebook page has the Mark Leader page as well, and my Instagram has B_marked_leader. So reach me in any of those capacities. I document really great, inspiring stories as well. If you have a great story that pertains into leadership or what that story has taught you or how to be a better leader, share it with me, and share any tools of success that you have that we could share with the world, and we could really be a force that elevates and inspires and forces people to see how great they are. So.
Absolutely. And also to quote you, to show people how you show up in the world and to each other by understanding that your presence is the most powerful thing you own. I think that's amazing. So if you would like to contact us at the Nevada Women's Business Center, please call us at area code 702-734-3555 or check us out online at www.nevadawbc.com. And thanks again. I'm Kathleen Taylor. Take care. Awesome. That was awesome. Very good.
Yay.
Very good.
So great.